I was shared a video from the Center for Immigration Studies, and this was like an hour-long panel. But in this particular panel, they talked about illegal immigration in relation to Black unemployment and Black employment. And for me, the topic of illegal immigration is economic. That's all it is, at least for me, in relation to the Black community. But on top of economic, it is racial as well. Now, there's going to be two men I want to show clips of. This one man is going to give detailed cases by the EEOC of how Black American workers were discriminated against due to illegal immigration. Now, these Black people are trying to get a job. They're trying to provide for their families. They're not trying to get on the system. They want to work. And the majority of Black people I know just want a job. They got to work. And then after that, there's going to be another brother that you're going to hear that brought those findings to the Congressional Black Caucus. And I want you to hear their response to these findings. Let's roll those clips.
I'll give an example. When a Best Western hotel in Virginia came under new management, the managers began systematically replacing the hotel's Black housekeepers with Hispanics. The replacement began when existing employees were told they would need to reapply for their positions after the management change. Subsequently, Blacks with years of experience were denied reemployment. Hispanic workers were hired in their place. One manager expressed her preference for hiring Hispanics as housekeepers. You'll notice I used the word systematic in that last case because that's a very key word. This is not an accidental bias. Another example of something very systematic. When a warehouse in Memphis began using a new employment agency to fill its daily work crew, the agency, quote, from the EEOC, essentially replaced the African Americans with Hispanics, end quote. Potential workers would line up outside the warehouse each day, but the agency would select Hispanics over Blacks, even when Black workers were farther ahead in line. Sometimes managers would send potential Black workers home by announcing in English that there were no more positions. After the African Americans left, the Hispanics were allowed to come into the warehouse and work. Again, systematic, neither subconscious nor subtle. Perhaps the most egregious example of this comes from Prestige Transportation Services. It would discard or refuse to accept employment applications from non-Hispanic Blacks. Quote from the EEOC, on multiple occasions when a Black person applied for employment, Prestige managers Ms. Ramirez and Ms. Rodriguez would stand behind the applicant and rub their hands on their skin to display their disdain for Black people, end quote. Staff meetings were conducted in Spanish only, and one Black driver who did manage to get hired would be sent home early while Hispanics continued to work. Now, I'm not going to read every case to you. There are 21 cases in the report. It would get a little boring, although I do recommend reading it because I think the repetition actually is instructive. You see the same things happening over and over again, which is telling. I do want to give you one more example. Most of the time, the low-skilled American workers who are discriminated against are Black workers, but sometimes they're whites as well. I want to give you an example of that. At a Hampton Inn in Colorado, 3 non-Hispanic white housekeepers were fired by the new general manager and replaced by Hispanics. The owners, Falgon Patel and Mukund Patel, told the general manager that they preferred that maids be Hispanic because in their opinion, Hispanics worked harder, while American employees are lazy. The general manager allegedly told a Hispanic employee to recruit friends for the incoming vacancies because the owners preferred a Hispanic workforce. After 3 months, all of the Hampton Inn's non-Hispanic housekeepers were gone. Now, there are probably some of you sitting there saying, okay, Jason, you call this qualitative research, but isn't that just a fancy name for a bunch of anecdotes? Well, I agree, there are a lot of anecdotes here, but I would say that the frequency and the consistency of these anecdotes is rather telling. To the point where you really have to be out of touch with reality to argue that there are no negative effects of immigration on Native workers. In fact, let me just repeat that because I think it's a pretty important point. If you argue there are 0 negative effects on Native workers from immigration, then you are out of touch with reality. Furthermore, the types of anecdotes that we do not find are just as important as the type that we do find. I mentioned that there are many cases of Hispanics being preferred to Black workers, but it was very, very difficult to find the reverse. Very difficult to find cases of blacks being preferred to Hispanics. Which is not to say Hispanics don't file EEOC lawsuits. They do, but their types of complaints they have are, again, very telling. When Hispanics file suits, they are not complaining that they are being replaced by some other group in the workforce. Instead, they're complaining about working conditions. They complain about low pay, they complain about dangerous situations on the job site, and they complain about harassment. Harassment oftentimes is ethnically based, ethnic slurs and so on directed at them. The saddest part is that when we're talking about Hispanic women, sexual harassment is a very pervasive problem if you believe these EEOC lawsuits, particularly out in the farm fields where there's very little to protect them. And we're not talking about just some stray comment, we're talking about some really objectionable stuff, unwanted touching, and worse that's going on out in the fields. I could do a whole additional report on that based on all the material the EEOC provides on that specific topic. The point is here, though, that the anecdotes conform to economic theory. This is exactly what we would expect to happen if we believe that employers are using immigration to depress wages and working conditions. Again, this severely calls into question anyone claiming that there are zero negative effects from immigration. So I'll leave it there, but I'm happy to continue the conversation in the Q&A later.
It was nationwide, but you'd see a lot of it in large metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Atlanta, but also in southeastern states, in certain industries, poultry industry, construction industry, so on and so forth. This was not a small displacement either. We had one witness who testified that after he had run the numbers, he found that 40% of the decline in labor participation rates among black workers over 3 decades was attributable to competition from illegal immigration. 40%. You did the math on that in terms of labor participation rate, you've got to do some joking of the numbers, but it comes to nearly 1 million fewer jobs for black Americans as a result of the competition from illegal immigrants. And it's not just the employment levels, it's the wage levels also. And I can only give you a few examples, but we had evidence from the Fed in Atlanta, which did a study on this, to show that illegal immigrants depressed wages, the competition from illegal immigrants, depressed wages by $960 on average, but in certain sectors, such as the hospitality industry, the depression of wage levels was $1,560. When you consider what the wage levels are for on an annualized basis, that's a significant amount of money. And because black workers were disproportionately concentrated in those areas, they were disproportionately affected. I can go on with this type of anecdotal data, which Jason's done a better job than we have of putting together and really highlighting the adverse effects of this. But there's a downstream effect also. And the downstream effect, which is kind of a domino effect, is, well, when you've got a lower employment rate or lower wages among a certain cohort of the population, that population is also likely to suffer certain adverse effects, such as family formation is at a lower rate, there's higher incarceration rates, and we see this kind of phenomenon displayed in the black community. Not all black communities, but enough of them to present a concern. And it was enough of a concern, by the way, we had a couple of other hearings related to this matter, not discreetly, not related just to the competition from illegal immigration, but it swerved into that phenomenon. This type of adverse impact was something that concerned us enough, at least concerned me enough, that we, on a number of occasions, reached out to political leadership, specifically the Congressional Black Caucus, because they call themselves the Congressional Black Caucus. I didn't call them that. And I thought that they would be particularly concerned about this particular issue because the adverse impact is egregious. So I can tell you that we made a number of attempts to highlight this issue to the Congressional Black Caucus. We sent several letters to the then head of the Congressional Black Caucus. All we heard were crickets. In fact, on one occasion, the head of the Congressional Black Caucus falsely claimed that they had never heard from us until we produced the letters, the multiple letters and contacts that we had with them, and then they had, there was radio silence from them. So there is, my concern is that on a political level, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of energy behind this particular issue and trying to address the impact of this particular issue. I think that's an abomination, and I'll leave it at that.
And I had a question for Peter. You talked about how the Congressional Black Caucus really wasn't all that interested in the kind of things you were finding. What do you think is behind that? In other words, why?
Yeah, I can't speak for them. I think, though, that they have an allegiance to whatever the reigning orthodoxy is in the Democratic Party. And the reigning orthodoxy was, at the time, broadening immigration, including illegal immigration, and I think there was a political imperative attached to that. I mean, no one's ever really done any studies or anything like this, but I think it's pretty plain that, you hear almost every day from various cohorts that one of the aims of, electoral aims of the Democratic Party, or at least among the progressives, is to increase the percentage or the number of people likely to vote for Democrats. And they hope that, blacks used to be the most reliable, and still are the most reliable constituency among the Democratic Party, and they were hoping, and there's actually been some commentary about this, and I think somebody wrote a book about it, that the aim was to change the demographics of the country to be more favorable to a Democratic electorate. So I think that may be a component of it, but beyond that, I'm baffled. Again, they call themselves the Congressional Black Caucus, and I would think they'd be concerned about issues that face the black community, and this is a significant issue that faces the black community.
Now, did you hear everything that was being said? You know what made me more upset? Not only what's happening to black American workers, but what made me more upset is you bring the findings to the Congressional Black Caucus. You get no response. But they called the Congressional Black Caucus. They were over and over and over and over and over letting you know what's going on with black American workers. You don't care. Then you finally get a response after being extremely persistent and act like you didn't know these people was calling you and telling you any information. Then the other gentleman said that, well, I thought this was supposed to be the Congressional Black Caucus. Yes, that's what we all thought. But as you heard, they don't want to care about the black Americans, black American workers. They don't care about them because they're worried about votes. They're following the Democrat Party, and they understand where their checks come from. Their checks come from the Democrat Party. So whatever the Democrat Party do and how they move, even their benign and neglect policy, even their anti-black behavior, their no giving tangibles to black Americans, all those things that the Democrat Party has shown us is that the alphabet community is way more important than black people's lives. All of that they have shown us, being pro illegal immigration, not immigration, but pro illegal immigration. They don't care about how it's affecting black people. They don't care. They're getting their checks. They have sold us down the river. All of them. I'm going to put it out there. All the Congressional Black Caucus, every last one of you have sold us down the river. Now you may say, well, Phil, how do you know all of them have done it? What if, no. Even if you had one Congressional Black Caucus member screaming in the wilderness, screaming, saying something, fighting. Number one, we would know what he or she is. They would have got all of our support, definitely would have got my support, fighting for us. But when you look at the Congressional Latino Caucus, and they have one, guess what they're doing? Fighting for their community. And I have no issue with that. That's what they're there for. They're at the border, fighting for their community. I take no issue with that. But guess who also is at the border? The Congressional Black Caucus. But when things happen to us, well, the caucus is there to show up when things happen to us. I'm just basing off of what I see. That's clear as day. Where are they at? They're not there in mass, standing up for us, fighting for us. But shoot, we don't even fight for ourselves. I'm talking about the Congressional Black Caucus. You want to get mad because when Elijah Cummings was alive, he was called out about Baltimore, which was a fact. That's a failure of the Congressional Black Caucus. Not just Elijah Cummings, the whole Congressional Black Caucus. any of these areas that black folks are running with this Democrat Party, and it looks like crap, that's a failure of the Congressional Black Caucus. It's a failure. The Congressional Black Caucus isn't worth anything. It can go, in my opinion. It don't need to be there no longer. It has not brought anything for black people, anything. Then John Conyers just died. So then they will argue and say, well, you know, we got Dr. King holiday to be a federal holiday. Okay. Once again, how did that holiday benefit the whole black community? Did it bring us anything tangible? Since the 1970s, have you got the race soldiers off our back? Have you done that? We're being more gentrified now than ever. You haven't stopped in that Congressional Black Caucus. Even right there in Washington, D.C., where you at, that's happening a lot to black communities, gentrification. You're not stopping that. Matter of fact, you're not even addressing gentrification. You're surely not addressing how illegal immigration hurts black people. As you heard over and over and over how black people had jobs, and these jobs was taken away from black people and given to those who doesn't have their immigration status right. And it was done based on race. And the Congressional Black Caucus says nothing. They're worried about impeaching Donald Trump instead of worrying about what's happening to black people. Don't even care about black people. They are the Congressional Black sellouts. They are the Congressional Black turncoats. They are the Congressional Black traitors. They are the Congressional Black Benedict Arnolds. Any other word you want to use, that's them. I have no support for the Congressional Black Caucus at all, because we see your actions and your movements. When it's time for you to start helping black people, you turn your back on information and data that's being presented to you. You don't stand up. You say nothing unless that Democrat Party tell you it's okay to say something. And we know the policy of the Democrat Party today toward black people is an extreme anti-black approach. They have these presidential candidates, anti-reparations, addressing a black agenda, all of that. That's that Democrat Party today under the leadership of Tom Perez, which is an Obama guy. He's an Obama guy. Okay. He isn't someone just come. No, he come underneath Obama. You see, Obama's presidency, has they helped us any? Then recently, President Obama, he speaks at Elijah Cummings' funeral, and I see some black people. Oh, I miss Obama. Oh, he spoke so well. He just has so much decorum. Okay, and what did he do for us? Nothing. We were killed more by the race soldiers under his 8 years than we being killed now under Trump by the police. I don't forget, because I do these stories. And the Congressional Black Caucus during that time period said nothing about that either. They are a waste of time. That group is a waste. They are the biggest caucus, and they the biggest one that does nothing. You might well just call yourself the Congressional Immigration Caucus. You might well go join whatever other caucus you want to. Go join the Alphabet Caucus, the Latino Caucus. Go join everybody else's caucus. Take black off of it, please. Because you don't do nothing for black people. You fight for everything else with black people. But everybody else's caucus fight for the group that they said that to fight for. It's embarrassing. And this is why no one respects black people. Because when you put yourself in the guise of a footstool, which all of you are, you can step on black people's backs to get ahead to where you want to be. Who respects a footstool? No respect anything they can put their foot on and get themselves up to the next level. And that's what the Congressional Black Caucus is. Nothing but footstools. They on their hands and knees while every other group step on their backs to get to where they want to go. And they're willing to get on their knees and hands so that people step on their backs. They don't stand up for anything. They don't. Then when we threaten them about, oh, you getting primaried. Oh, well, why you treat me like that? I mean, I fight for black. You don't do crap. You don't do crap. I can look at y'all. Y'all look so polished. Y'all don't have a hair out of place. All of y'all. You go in there with a job that's making less than $200,000. All y'all come out millionaires at the expense of black people. This is why black people are angry with this current Democrat Party. This is why we're angry. And for the people who, I don't want to use the word, let me not say that word. For the people who have a hard time grasping some things, when people are upset at the Democrat Party, doesn't mean they're Republicans. I know they trained you so well. I know they have. What we're saying is the Democrat Party will be brought to task for not giving us anything and being pro everyone else except black people. The benign neglect is not going to work anymore. It's not going to fly. The stepping on our backs with other groups sanctioned by them, it's not going to fly anymore. And we stay quiet and just be on our hands and knees and let it happen. That's not going to happen anymore. We don't have to vote faithfully for the Democrat Party. We could sit it out. We could sit it out. I'm not saying go run and vote for Donald Trump, but the way y'all doing things with this immigration, you're going to make black folks vote for Donald Trump. I'm hearing black folks talking about they can't stand Trump, but they'll vote for him on the immigration issue because it's hurting black workers. Black folks need low-skilled jobs too. Did you hear that one brother talk about? There was one section of that said that illegal immigration brings down wages a lot of times $900, close to $1,000 in a month's time, because these employers are taking advantage of those people because they want the low-skilled work. But the fact is, the Congressional Black Caucus won't push for the laws to be enforced, which says it's illegal to hire someone that you know is illegal. Instead of trying to push for them to get arrested and curve that, no, you won't do that. No, you're promoting sanctuary cities. But where's the sanctuary city for black people, Congressional Black Caucus? When we free from racism, we free from the race soldiers. Do you get that? Sanctuary cities protect them. We haven't got one sanctuary city that we protected from the race soldiers. Not even one. They will defy the president. They will defy everything else. But they'll never defy the president or for us, the Congressional Black Caucus, and all our quote unquote supposed liberal friends. They won't do that. This is why black folks saying, I'm going to sit it out. For what? Vote for what? It's like Elizabeth Warren has said, cut a check for what? A check for what? Well, vote for what? Vote for what? Donald Trump in office, hey, my light's on. I'm good. I had to feed my kids. That's not going to start whether Donald Trump's in office or not. Y'all trying to sit up here and impeach the dude, like, it's not going to happen. Because in the Senate, Mitch McConnell's not going to let that ride. So y'all already know. And the reason you're doing it is not even something that the whole country can get behind. Because and Al Green clearly said we got to impeach him because, he going to win. It lets you know y'all candidates that at least the ones you picked to put up front, they're not going to win. But I want to let you guys know this is the Congressional Black Caucus. And I'm so glad these people are starting to be exposed. They're starting to be exposed. You're talking about the Republicans. Man, y'all are worse than the Republicans with your racism. At least they are front with theirs. They're up front. They're up front when they're trying to gerrymander districts. They're up front with it. They're up front. But y'all, for a long time, has deceived black people. Now, I know you're going to have, unfortunately, I hate to say this, you're going to have some baby boomers in our community that's going to go vote Democrat, regardless of selling us down the river, because they feel that someone that has black skin, that's all they need to see. Not that they're going to do anything for them, but they still have that thing, well, they black like me, and no. So you still going to have that in the next election. But for me, if you're not giving black folks anything, whether you're at the congressional level, Senate level, locally, it doesn't matter. If you're not giving black folks anything, and you in my area, I'm not voting for you. I'm not doing it. And that lesser of two evil thing don't work for me either. Like Dick Gregory said, you still voted for evil. Well, why did you vote if you know both people are evil? And that's the truth. Stop all that. Well, we got to vote for the lesser of two evils. Why would you vote for evil if you know both are evil? You vote for good, right? But leave me a comment there if you know anything about the situation about the Congressional Black Caucus. But I will say all of us need to turn up the heat on the Congressional Black Caucus. All of them. None of them is immune to it. Whether they just come into office or they've been there 30 years, all of them are complicit. All of them need to start speaking up. all of them need to start fighting for the rights of the black community. And if they're not going to fight for the rights of the black community, shut that caucus down. Y'all just be representatives. Don't say nothing about no congressional black anything, because from what I'm looking at, you congressional everyone else except black.